Good morning. Ooh. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Hope my connection stays good. I'm outside. I wanted to give this a try. Hopefully it's working. I'm starting out. I think that should be better now. I was having a poor connection outside, so I took my Wi-Fi off. So hopefully that helped. Will y'all let me know if you can hear me okay? Or if the picture is poor or good? Good morning to everybody. Happy you're here at 9:30 on a Saturday morning. It's September. What I'm doing today is we are going to be drawing a zinnia. Okay, thank you. Sigh, Mom. Hello. Thanks for letting me know it sounds good. Great, thanks, Angie. All right, so we are outside at one of my gardens, and I wanted to talk about something before we go in to draw, which we're going to be drawing zinnias. And I titled this week's botanical art All Bloomed Out. And what that is, good morning, Kevin. That comes from, lots of people say it, but several years ago when I worked on a flower farm in Virginia, Wallem Gardens, look it up if you're ever in the area. It's about an hour out of DC. It's a fabulous place. They call themselves a flower destination. It's so true. Just a really inspirational place. And they've got like an Airbnb there too, so you can just stay and enjoy. So anyway, that's my little plug for the flower farm that I love. Shout out to Bob Wallem. Anyway, when I was working there, we would say that when something was nearing its growing season, when it was done, it was all bloomed out. And so as we are in September and we are nearing fall, hopefully, our plants are pretty bloomed out. And I'm going to show you. Don't judge my garden. This is not how it normally looks, but it's because it's seen happier days. It's about bloomed out. So I've got blooms still, but you'll see a lot of them are kind of like this. They're a little sad. Things are shriveling. These zinnias have seen better days because it is the end of their growing time, right? Now some of them, hey little guy, some of them have, some buds that are still coming up. And so obviously I'm not one of those people who tears things down just because they're ending their growing season. Because I like to see my plants bloom as long as they will. But I wanted to clip with y'all today. And there are so many gorgeous things out here. This is my also kind of bloomed out, growing up that trellis. This is a hyacinth bean vine. And it does turn to bean. You can kind of see up there a little bit. Let me zoom in. Starting to go to bean up there. But gorgeous leaves. Really pretty. I'm getting distracted by plants. Sorry, y'all. All right. Yes, I totally agree. The butterflies and bees are still all about it. But so, when you clip something, this is just a fun, friendly tip in case you didn't know, to encourage growth. That is part of why we do this. One, yes, we like to have flowers, right? Because they're pretty. But two, you want to clip flowers off of plants to encourage them to keep growing. So if I didn't cut anything off, kind of like I've done on this one right here, it's all bloomed out because I also haven't encouraged it to grow anymore. So when you're cutting things off, you want to look down and you'll see, let's see if I can do this. Like right here, this is going to be a new plant that's starting right here. Or not a new plant, but a new flower. A stem will come up out of that. And so I don't want to cut down here and lose that. So I'm going to cut this stem for this flower right above where this one's starting to grow. And that's going to encourage this one to make some more flowers. And that's pretty true for most flowering plants. You can look down and see along the stem where new babies are growing. And you want to clip above that so that you're not, cutting off new growth. All right. I think that's about it for my cutting lesson today. Is everybody having a good morning? Thank y'all for being here. I'm going to cut a couple more. I haven't quite decided which one I want to draw and color in yet. But I hope everybody's doing well. Good, having good mornings, I hope. We'll cut one more. Let's see. There you go. And this really pretty orange. Let me show y'all this one. Gorgeous color. Love that so much. I think I might just cut that one for our activity today because that's just too pretty to not use. All right. Okay, we have our flowers. I would encourage you, if you have anything growing at home that you would like to do, you don't have to do zinnias just because I'm doing zinnias, right? So you can follow along with any kind of flower or even non-flowering plant that you have. And the steps are still going to be the same. We're still going to start with pencil. We're going to use basic lines and shapes to create the shape. And then we're going to color it in the same way. So, all right, I will work on getting y'all on here. And then we'll get going. I hope everybody's having a great morning. We're about to start making art. And here we go. All right, so putting you here. Oh, and I also wanted to say, if it's not obvious, we are working inside today because I have been a little bit too hot our last couple of botanical arts, and it's exhausted me during the process, and I've noticed how flushed my cheeks looked at the end. And so today we're going to be working inside in my air conditioning. So we're doing kind of like kitchen table botanical art today. All right. Is anybody planning on drawing along today, or are you just watching for fun and sipping your coffee? I would love to know. All right, I'm stripping the leaves off because I don't want them on there, so that just means I'm holding it kind of like this and going, no more leaves. Of course, if you want to draw the leaves, don't strip them off. All right. I want that one. Bring that into the shot so you can see it a little better. Get these out of the way. I hope everybody's having a good morning. Glad you're here. I'm happy to be here with you. Let's see. Try to get that at a good angle for y'all. That looks good. And zoom in a little bit. Perfect. It's got a little bit of my shadow on it, but I'm going to try to work up here where there won't be so much shadow. Zinnias are one of my favorite flowers. They're really easy to grow, like almost too easy. And they will come back year after year. If you do let them go to seed in the garden, they will grow. They are perennials and very prolific perennials. They will come back in full force and very happy. And they like a lot of sun, and they do handle the heat, but they don't want it to be like, kind of how it's been lately, maybe a little bit too hot. All right, so I'm going to be working. I still want you to kind of see that. Let me see if I can get that on there where you can see it. That should work. Hopefully it won't fall over. All right. I'm going to be working. I've just got drawing paper attached to this clipboard, which is set up against my tabletop easel. And I've got I'm working with a drawing pencil. I'm using a 2B, so it's a fairly soft lead as usual, and that is just because it's going to help it be darker here so you can see it easier. If I were working just by myself for my own art for fun, and I would suggest to you to use something that's got a harder lead, so it's got a much lighter pencil mark, so something that's got an H on it, so a 2H, etc. And then one other thing that we're going to need, obviously an eraser, but I also have a scratch sheet of paper, and if you don't have a scratch sheet, you can use the sheet that you're working on also, but the scratch sheet is for testing out the Prismacolors, so I can get a feel for what's going to blend well when we get to the color portion. All right. Okay, so working with my little zinnia here. Let me take a sip of my coffee real fast. Good morning. Say good morning to the muses. Good morning. All right. So I'm looking at this, the way I'm seeing it is this. So I'm going to be drawing it sort of like that. So again, you don't have to draw exactly what I'm drawing. If you have something at home to work with, that's great. But I'm going to have it at this angle for myself. And if you do want to follow along how I'm drawing, then that is also up to you. Your choice, draw what you like. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start towards the, move over a little bit, what would be kind of the center of the flower. I'm going to get a feel for where my center is, and then I like to work my way out when I am drawing. When I am painting, I kind of do an opposite. I get the full shape on, and then I work on details from there. But for me, it's more comfortable when I'm drawing to start small with the little details in the center and then work my way out. We want to remember that this is botanical art, and we are here to have fun. It's not botanical illustration, which is when everything has to be extremely precise and appropriate. Of course, we want our proportions to be appropriate. That's something, or I say of course, I personally like my proportions to be appropriate. Helps it have a little bit more realism to it. So I'm just getting a feel for where the shape is. Let me get you in a little bit closer, because I do draw really, really light. I guess I can draw a little harder. All right, that better? That's better. Let me move it where you can see it a little bit or two. Always a guessing game, week by week. All right, and I'm gonna work on, there's some little tiny petals that don't quite bloom in there. I'm gonna get those in. And I'm doing some overlapping. I can go back and erase some of the things that I'm putting in later. I don't have to worry too much about. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Y'all let me know if that's good. I know I want you to be able to see the details, but I also want you to kind of be able to see the flower. Let me know what you think. Doing this for y'all, so give me your feedback. Keep in mind, some of the petals are coming towards us and some are going away. So that's going to change how you draw your lines and your shapes, and what kind of curve they might have, and also where they're bigger versus where they're smaller. So if something's coming towards you, if you're closer to it, it's going to look like it's bigger. And if it's farther away, it's going to look smaller. Zinnias have what we kind of call the petal shape you would think of as a petal, right? It's got just that little bit of a curve at the top. I will say some look a little more spidery. They have created some varieties that have a slightly different petal shape. But your traditional zinnia's got what we kind of think of as pretty basic petal shapes. And it's just a matter of looking and seeing where they're coming from, which direction they're going in, and how big they are. And that's what helps us draw them with some realism. So I'm just kind of doing little loops, but making sure that I've got them kind of going in the direction that I want them to go in, according to how I'm seeing them on the flower. I'll add a couple little more guys in here. They are growing there. And then this one's kind of underneath. Come back like that. And then there's a big gap here on my flower. Right there. And there's bigger petals underneath. Let's see. I did choose somebody with a lot of petals, and I love that, but I also want to give myself enough time to have all the color that I want to add. So remember that you always have the artistic license to make choices, and if you don't want to do quite as many petals as what you're seeing on your flower, or you don't want to make quite as many leaves on your plant, guess what? Nobody else will know, because you were drawing it, you're creating it. All right. If you are following along today, I would love to know what you're creating. Are you doing a zinnia also? Are you doing something different? I'd love to hear about it. We would also always love to see what you make. You can send them to this Instagram. You can message them to us. It's looking a little heavy on this side because I haven't added anything over here, but don't worry, I will. Let's see. And so a lot of these little petals that I'm doing down here, you'll see that I'm giving it a little bit more of a flatter edge to it, where these ones were more rounded. And that is because these petals down here have almost, they've grown out and then curved back. And so I'll show you. So when you're looking at it head on, it looks flat, but really it's just because their pointy part has curved under it. But again, that's how I see it. I see it as a straight line from my viewpoint, and so that's how I want to draw it, because I'm trying to draw it as I see it. Just observing today. Well, I'm happy you're here to observe. Hope you're getting to enjoy some nature yourself, maybe some coffee or tea. Or water. I never say water as much as I should. Water is so good for us. And these are all kind of very tightly overlapped, so that's why you're not going to see the full length or the full petal of every petal, because they've got others on top of them. Need a layer closer up here. And so again, these ones are farther away from me on this edge now. And so I'm seeing much less of the petal because they're being covered by these. And so how I'm seeing it is how I'm drawing it. Even though I know they're fully shaped petals, I don't see the full shape. I just see little bits of them. All right, I think I missed one right here. And then for my little stem, well, I'm gonna put one more right here. One more right there. All right. My little stem's gonna come down pretty much down the center. Let's see. And I always say, just try to trust yourself and just draw it in. It's not always gonna be perfect, and that is okay. Sometimes it gets too thick. Mine got a little thick right here. I can fix that with the color. All right. And so for the sake of this being a zinnia, even though I stripped it completely and there are no more leaves on it, I can look at another zinnia, because zinnias have very distinct leaves, and I can add on a couple of leaves to this one, okay? So this is one of my queen limes. So pretty, but very bloomed out. That's not their usual color. Usually a lot more reddish and green than that, a little more vibrant. But so their leaves, zinnia leaves, let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. Have this very pointed end and a very rounded part where they are touching the stem, where they are attached to the stem. And so we are going to create some leaves on this one from looking at this one, okay? So, the way I'm seeing it, I see a little bit of the back side there, curving in and then going up. And this one's coming off this part of the stem, coming around, and then going right up to that one. A little bit more back there. And then this one is up a little bit higher and kind of comes back behind it and up. All about the angle. Make that a little bit wider right here. You can always adjust. Erasing the line I don't like. All right. That's good for me. How's everybody feeling? We're gonna get to color now, the fun part, or the extra fun part. All right. There we go. All right. So we have chosen this really, really, really vibrant orange zinnia. If you want to, if you're working from your phone, or if you are watching now and you're going to draw or color later and you want to use this zinnia for yours, I can hold it steady for a second if you want to take a screenshot, and then you can use it later for your color, if you like. Or depending on what angle you want it from. It's got such great shadow in here too. All right. If you wanted to do that and you didn't have a moment to do that while I was holding it, let me know and I can definitely do that again. All right, so the first thing that I want to do with my colors is I've got my scratch sheet, okay? And I'm gonna kind of feel out what I want to use. So I've got, I tested out some greens earlier, some Prismacolor greens. I always have a white on hand because you want to use this to add, Prismacolors blend really well, and so this will help create tints or lighter values in areas where you want it to seem like it's, again, catching light and maybe a little closer to you. And then I've got a variety of greens that I'll be using on the stem, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then I want to play with some oranges, obviously, because we, again, have this really fun orange, colorful zinnia. All right. So I've grabbed a variety. We're gonna play, see what we get. I'm gonna test out a pale vermilion, which is a regular vermilion is kind of like a reddish orange, and so this is going to be a little lighter. All right. And so when I'm testing my colors, I just kind of like to get a good little block on there like this, and then if it helps, right next to it, or do some initials next to it. So that's pale vermilion, so I don't forget which color I was using. And then I'm going to play with some others and just kind of see how they blend together. All right, so this one is a poppy red. So down here where I can see it by itself, and then let it blend a little bit with that. That's really pretty. So that's my poppy red. Put that right there. And both of those look pretty close to what actually is on that. Look for some slightly lighter orange. I've got a cad orange, a cadmium orange. Test that out. I'm going to pull that also into the pale vermilion, so I'm going to put it up here. And so one thing about Prismacolors is sometimes they look a little different on the color of the pencil that they give it versus when you use it, which is why it's a really great idea to test it out. So that looked a lot darker than I would have anticipated. But I do like it. It looks kind of like a good burnt orange, which I think would be good for some of the shadows. So that's nice. So that was the cad. Whoop. All right. And then I really want to play with some yellows blending in, because this orange of the zinnia has a lot of yellows for some of the highlights, and even some of those petals definitely have like a striking yellow on them. So just go back over there. All right, a lemon yellow, very bright in Prismacolor land. Just gonna kind of fill out blending that with all of them just to see how it looks. A lot of art, especially when you are doing something new, is experimenting. Getting a feel for the new material or the new color. All right, so this is blending really beautifully with that pale vermilion. Really nice. I like that a lot. You can see that in there. That's really pretty. So I definitely want to use those two together. And then this is your kind of a typical yellow, canary yellow. It's a little bit more buttery than the lemon. And again, I'm just kind of pulling it in to see how they work together. That's nice too. I think we made some good choices. I think that's going to be about my range, and then I want a little bit of, let's see, maybe a deeper red or a reddish brown for some of my shadows, I think. Yeah, I like that. This one I just tested right here. This is called a pumpkin orange. Pumpkin. Looks a little darker than what I would assume a pumpkin might look like. This might be a pumpkin who's seen better days also. Maybe it's all bloomed out. All right. I think that'll be a nice thing to use for some of our darker orange in the shadows. All right, I've got my colors. We've got about 30 minutes left, which should be plenty of fun time to work on adding color to this drawing. All right, so I'm looking at my zinnia, and down in here in the center, I've got definitely deeper oranges, closer to a brown, and maybe a little bit of kind of like a deeper maroonish color. So I might get a little bit of that deeper orange that I just picked out, that pumpkin orange. And I'm going to start by just putting that in there, just getting the color in. Not very precisely. The way that a zinnia's center is, it's got a lot the stamen and the anther are there. There's these little tiny, a bunch of little tiny filaments that you see. Whoop, my hand was blocking you, I think. So a bunch of little lines. I'm not going to take the time to draw out every little line, but I'm going to represent that by just keeping it kind of scribbly instead of coloring it in really well. And then for the smaller petals near here that we drew, like in here in the center, I'm going to keep those a really kind of a pale yellow. So I'm going to take the lemon yellow that I pulled out earlier, and I'm going to color those, but then I'm going to put white on them to make them paler, to lighten them up. Now again, since I am working with a softer lead pencil, I'm working with a 2B, that does affect the way that mine is going to look. The lead will blend with the Prismacolors also a little bit, which is again why I would also suggest using a harder lead pencil, so it won't blend as much. It kind of muddies it just a little bit, but it's not the end of the world for a demonstration. All right, taking my white, and I'm just going to go right back on top of those, just to lighten them and brighten them up a little bit. If I didn't already say this, one thing you always want to have handy if you're working with colored pencils is a pencil sharpener. I almost couldn't find mine this morning, and then I remembered where I put it, so yay! All right, I'm going to start working on the petals, and I'm just going to start with that pale vermilion orange and just kind of start going around. And then as I'm working, I will add some different colors to kind of, I will blend them more to bring out the idea of some implied depth in here. I would love to hear from y'all. It's a very quiet group this morning. Is everybody having a good time? Are you having a good morning? If anybody just joined us, welcome and thank you for being here. One thing you'll notice that I'm doing, especially where the petals are rounded, is I'm not just drawing in straight lines. I like to go in circles to get the feel of the shape of whatever it is that I am coloring in. And remember, this is just our first layer of color. We will be adding more and blending more to help it look a little bit more lifelike and to waken it up a little bit. All right, definitely want to bring in some yellow on some of these in here, similar to how this zinnia is in the center, where it's got those yellow, almost like stripes. Not fully variegated, but the idea of some striped petals. So I'm going to bring in my canary yellow for that. Is my surface a sketch pad? So it's actually, thank you for asking, this is a sheet of 80-pound drawing paper, and then I've got it clipped to a clipboard. But I mean, so essentially, yes, it could be a sketch pad. But I'm using 80-pound paper. Great question. So I'm using this yellow here, trying to pick up anywhere where I didn't kind of color in fully, so you can see that kind of pop a little better. One other thing that I can say while we are, while I'm kind of not talking, and while we are zoning out, I guess, into our drawings, I can tell you that some upcoming museum programs this week, if you might be interested. We've got our reading group on Wednesday, which that's transitioned from, that used to be our members only book club, Ekphrasis, and it has changed to being open to the public reading group. You do not have to be a member to be a part of this reading group. And it's going to be a Zoom meeting on Wednesday from 12 to 1. And you can find that link, I know on our Facebook, and I bet here on Instagram too. And if you aren't available from 12 to 1 on Wednesday, you can catch it on Facebook, if you have Facebook, on Thursday. I believe it starts at 5:30. I'll have to double check that. I'm pretty sure it does. And that is basically just, it airs the recording from the Zoom. And that's going to be led by Curator of Art Jennifer Jankowskis, Dr. Jankowskis at the museum. And it is the book, let me think, 33 Artists in 3 Acts by Sarah Thornton. Good little meshing of the arts there. Let's see. And then next Saturday, right here on Instagram, we have another local artist live with the wonderful Sunny Polk. And that is just like I'm live right now on Instagram. She'll be doing the same next Saturday. That is September 12th, from 10 to 10:30. If you are not familiar with Sunny and her work, you really don't want to miss it. She creates just gorgeous, vibrant portraiture. She's just a really great representation of the South and in Montgomery. Being from Montgomery herself. All right, so I'm back to adding some orange after I've gotten a little bit of yellow on these inner petals up here. I'm working with my pale vermilion again. Just adding some more color as I go around. And after I get everything with the color on there, I'm going to go back and kind of feel out where there might be some shadows, where my depths are. So I'm not doing necessarily completely full coverage on everyone, because I do want to leave a little room for that darker orange to be picked up. And then I can always go back and bring this vermilion in again. knocked over my pencils. All is well. One thing you learn as an instructor for art is how to put yourself in really awkward positions while you are creating so that people can see what you're doing. To do that in studio classes a lot. Create in very unnatural ways so that people can see what you're working on. All right, so I've got my base of orange on, but it's not necessarily very well put in just yet because, like I said, I'm going to go back and add a little bit of the darker orange for some shadows. And so I'm talking about all these areas where you see where the petals are overlapping in between petals, where it is just very obvious there's a darker kind of a reddish orange in there, or almost a burnt orange. And so again, Prismacolor just blends so beautifully. So I just like to kind of play with the same color family while I am creating depth. But if I want it to be really striking, sometimes I will pull in a complementary color, or maybe a black to create a really strong shadow, depending. But I think with orange, this is really going to work nicely. And so you can just tell just by adding that little bit of this pumpkin orange, this kind of darker, muddy orange, that's starting to create this idea of depth between the petals. I'm not going to cover it entirely, unless I saw one like that. But really, most of them, it's just down kind of in between the lines where it looks a little bit darker. And especially on the lower petals, because those are, those opened up first, and so they have curved down more, and they're getting more shadow cast on them from the upper petals. How's everybody doing? Hope you're having fun, or at least just enjoying watching. So funny to think that when we first started doing these live streams, this Backyard Botanical Art, it was back in the spring, and that was almost 2 full seasons ago. I've enjoyed this so much. I do a botanical workshop at the museum when we have in-person programming, which we haven't picked back up yet, for safety purposes, obviously. But this has been a really fun rendition of the program. And our next botanical art in October will be our first fall themed. I will keep my fingers very crossed, please also do, for cooler weather. That is what I am hoping for our next botanical art, to be back outside with y'all via the virtual world, via Instagram. But definitely with some cooler weather, I hope. Picking up a couple more shadowy areas. I have to remember to not get too carried away with the color and to leave time for us to do the stem and leaves. Bring in one that I haven't used yet, but I've tested out earlier on my sheet in here, the poppy poppy red, which has more of an orangey look to it. And I'm just going to use that on some of these edges of the flowers that I didn't quite finish. Because again, it's a little bit, it seems a little darker at the bottom. I could do Prismacolors all day long, y'all, and probably working on the same thing, just blending colors and playing. They're so beautiful. And then for a couple of those, I'm going to pull in a little bit more, let's see, of our lighter orange. That one seemed a little bit dark. Maybe I'll just pull some yellow into it to make it blend and be a lighter. So I'm going to use that canary again. So I'm just blending the canary red on top of where I've done the orange. Just to lighten it up a little bit. So red and yellow make orange, right? And you can play with those two primary colors within the secondary color you're using if you want to give it a slightly deeper or lighter look. So a little bit more yellow in there to lighten it up, or a little bit more red in there to deepen it up, or deepen it down. That's fun. I like that. All right, let's save room for our stem and leaf. Or save time rather. So I'm going to put that back a little bit, make sure it's in the light so you can see it well. That looks good. All right, and the greens that I have, and I'm keeping my white out just in case. The greens that I've chosen, and we might not need this many, but I like to have them out and on hand just in case. And I also have a black out just to be safe. All right. I'm going to mostly be using one of my favorite Prismacolor colors. It's called apple green. All right. And if you see that, it's kind of what I would normally call maybe kind of like a grassy green. It's a little bit lighter, but what we think of when we think of green, right? I'm going to sharpen mine just a little bit. It's a little bit dull. So I'm going to give it a little sharpen really fast. Okay, much better. Much better. All right. And I'm going to just start coloring in my stem and then my leaves. And again, this is kind of where you can reshape your stem if you didn't really like what you had the first time. When you drew it, you don't have to color it all the way in. Okay, just a little bit of color on there, and the same thing on the leaves. I'm going to use kind of a circular motion where it's a little rounded, just like I did on the petals. And then I'm going to use more straight lines for the pointed edges. Okay. And then to add a little bit more depth to the stem and leaves, I'm going to do the same as I did up here. I've got a little bit of a darker green and a lighter green to bring out the highlights and the shadowy depths. And so I've got a grass green, so I refer to this as a grass green. what I was just using, right? To me, it feels a little bit more of a grass, but this is what Prismacolor calls a grass green. It's much darker, and I'll show you on the paper before I put it on my, there. And then the way they blend is just super pretty. Right there in the middle, kind of creates this kind of a velvety green color, if you want to call it that. All right, so I'm looking at my leaves on this one. And I want to pull in the idea of depth, because the way the leaves are, they kind of dip down in here, almost like a little bit of a cup, a very shallow cup. So I want to have a little bit of depth in there. And then same thing back here. And I also want to make sure that I get the darker green where it should be with where shadows would be. So like this leaf is going to be causing a darker green on the stem right here, and then same down here for this one. All right, and then I'm gonna pull in a little bit of a lighter green. I've got a chartreuse out, which is one of my favorite greens also, just because I like to say chartreuse. Also, it's a pretty color. And I'm gonna use that to blend in right on top of those greens. So pretty. So again, this is the idea of where it's kind of scooping up then and adding a little bit more, or catching a little more light, I suppose. All right. I've got one more darker green I want to play with really fast. It's a moss green. And so it looks kind of almost like a putty color. Again, the way that it looks on the Prismacolor branding doesn't always quite look how it looks when you color with it. It's a good dark, almost kind of army-ish green. And when you blend those two together, that gives you a good dark depth that I really want for my shadow in here. And a little bit underneath the flower too. We're about done with the general color, which is good because we have about 5 minutes left. And what I'm gonna do, taking some time, and I've looked at the flower a little more while I was working on the stem. And I would like to go back with just a little bit of black, and I'm going to use this just to give a little bit of definition in here with the flower, particularly in these areas where there really is a lot more definition in real life. You maybe can't see it as well because of the shadow with my lighting, but I want to get just a little bit more of that definition in here. So I'm going to take my black. I want it to be really, really, really sharp because I want a really thin line. Okay. And I'm just going to define some of these areas in here. Where it might be a little bit shadowy, shadier than I did with the orange. Not a lot. I don't want it to overpower what I've done, just to help add that little bit extra definition. can go back with some orange over that if it's getting too, if the black is standing out too much. I can go back and pull it in with the orange. I think I like that. All right, I think we're going to call that about done. How does everybody else feel? Did you have fun? If you were drawing along, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and if you were just watching for fun, I hope you feel relaxed and energized and ready to create something of your own. Hope everybody has a wonderful Labor Day weekend. And like I said, please, if you can, tune in on Wednesday, Zoom 12 to 1 for our reading group. And then next Saturday is another Local Artist Live with Sunny Palk right here on Instagram. And that is from 10 to 10:30 on September 12th. I can't seem to stop, y'all. I want to keep playing with the colors. Like I said, I could blend Prismacolors all day long. They're so smooth and beautiful. All right. Thank you very much. Hope you had a great day. Glad you're all here. Sure. Yeah, I would love to do that. We've got plenty of time for that. Perfect question. There's our screenshot if you want to get it. That's straight on. Let me know if you got that. And then I can hold it at a little bit of an angle also if you'd like to get a screenshot. Kind of like that. Maybe I can zoom out too just a little bit. You let me know how you like it, how you want it to look. Perfect. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to keep holding this just in case anybody needs it. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you next time. October. I think I have just enough time to tell you. I'm pulling it up on my calendar. Let's see. October 3rd will be our next botanical art. And it will be fall themed, and we are wishing for cooler weather. All right, thanks everybody. I hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend.